Well, honey, we're outside walking again, so we're gonna do part 2 of our art discussion. I didn't even edit part 1 yet, so this actually might be like part 3 or 5, you know, depending on when I actually edit it. And of course, already we're starting with my hand in the way. But I don't know, maybe I'll be able to fix that. Hey, how are you? Why do you have your mouth wide open, Matthew? He's looking at a dog. He's like this. And he's not thirsty.
Another one.
Yeah, another one. You want to go on the other side?
Yeah.
We meandered a lot, but I think we were going into high school and college
Yeah.
last time. So yeah, I was like, I mentioned this yesterday, and I was sketching a lot of like what I was seeing, and a lot of it was like a copying style. So I remember, I think I showed you one of my older sketchbooks. I had Chris Pacello Generation X sketch. I tried to do J. Scott Campbell Gen 13. That was a little too cheeky for me.
Cheeky.
Yeah. I remember doing, I was a fan of, and my wife has helped organize some of my books. You might have seen that last year. Some. A portion.
A good majority, I would say.
Okay. You may have seen that video series last year. I'll put a link in case you didn't, or in case you want to revisit it. And occasionally we would run across a book from my youth, like Evangeline, and my wife would say, "Why do you have this?" And my answer was, "Honey, I was 14."
Wasn't Evangeline?
There wasn't that's an example.
Umbrella.
Yeah.
There was one umbrella.
But the answer remains the same, honey. I was 14 at one time. And
so you're going out of it?
yeah, I look, and he's 1, he's got 13 years, and then you're like, why, when did he become a creep? And it's going to be like around this time. It happens.
No.
Oh yeah,
No.
I guarantee it.
Mm.
It's just natural.
Yeah.
Then, how's it going? Was that a man or a woman?
I think it's a woman.
Are you sure?
Pretty positive.
And we're passing Halloween displays again. I like this is a Wendigo.
Yeah, it's creepy.
Yes, or Wendigo,
I think it moves.
which happens to also be not that design, but the first appearance of Wolverine. Him and Hulk were fighting a Wendigo. Actually, I think it was like a 3-way fight, but
How many feet is it? 7? 8?
more than that.
Oh my god.
Probably about 10.
Jeez.
You might see it in the background. I'm going to try to arc it so you can see it. Let's see. No, we're too far down. I don't know. Maybe I'll take a thing. Anyway, we're way off topic already. So
You could take a picture and post it.
yeah, well, I could, but I could do a lot of things.
Yeah. Can you fly?
I could do a lot of things with money. Yeah, so around that time, I really was starting to just have more fun with art. I was taking like high school photography classes and just kind of general art classes, and that's when I did some of like my first paintings. Do you remember, I don't know if you remember, in my mom's garage I showed you like the Jimi Hendrix and Jimi Hendrix painting and everything.
I think so.
Yeah, that was the first painting I've ever did. It's in my mom's garage.
I barely remember that.
Yeah, one of Maria's brothers, one of my stepmother's brothers actually was like, "Oh, I would buy that and hang it in my office. I should see if he wants money now."
There you go.
If he wants it now, I was like, "Hey, how about $1,000? That sounds good to me." I also, excuse you, buddy, had a lot of fun just kind of sketching scenes from my favorite movies. The Professional, I remember, was one, which you refused to watch it with me. It's an excellent movie. Still one of my favorites. Reservoir Dogs, I remember I did a whole project with that. And one of my favorite pieces, I remember I used this actually in my college portfolio. Something I realized, and still holds true, in all of the Tarantino movies that had come out to that point, and even today, before there is a big scene or some sort of big action, there's a scene where the characters are either eating or sitting around a table. There's some sort of breaking of the bread, so to speak, involved. So by this point, when I was in high school, remember, I graduated in 1997.
Holy cow, that's ancient.
Nobody said, relax, you.
10 decades ago. 20 decades ago.
So at that point, Tarantino only had out Pulp Fiction, Reservoir Dogs, and yeah, because Jackie Brown had not even come out yet. So I had done a sketch, it's still in my portfolio, of all the characters from both films, all the main characters, I should say, just kind of like all in the same diner at once. That actually might be something cool to redo at some point, but I remember my teacher really liking it. I remember a couple of the college admissions people really liking it too. But yeah, I think you're right. I think that was a girl. One kind of key thing, and perhaps this has kind of affected my whole approach to artwork, and this is a talk I intend on having with our children when they're in high school. Like,
That's a long time.
nobody really said to me, hey, when you start going to college and you start thinking about what you want to do, nobody really said, hey, you're gonna have to make this into a job when you're done. I'm not saying I regret any decisions, but majoring in art has not been, let's say, financially amazing for me, because it wasn't like you graduate and
But you really never tried, to be honest.
no, but
Let's be fair.
I did.
No.
I know it was a long time before you met me, but we're fast forwarding, so let's scale it back. So I had applied to, I think, 6 different schools, some pretty prestigious ones, and I got into all but one of them. The only one I didn't get into was Carnegie Mellon out in Pittsburgh, but I chose Rutgers, and my whole thing was, at that point, I wanted to go into computer animation. That was the new thing, and be like a cartoonist. And all the colleges I went to were like, yeah, we've got the stuff, we're putting the program in. So went to Rutgers. And I should say this, I don't regret going there, only because without this experience, I wouldn't be where I am. I certainly wouldn't have met my buddies Mark, Nick, and Sam, who are like brothers to me. But I didn't have a great experience. And part of it was I didn't really have sight of what it meant for art, because I was still like, yeah, this is fun. I like doing this. When I went into the art program at Rutgers, it was when they had all separate schools. So this was technically Mason Gross, which for those of you who may not be familiar with Rutgers, it's in New Brunswick, New Jersey, which is a heavily urban area. It was worse when I was there, and I was right in the middle of downtown. The Mason Gross building, where the majority of my classes were for the first 2.5 years, was right there, right in the middle of the hood, which led to some interesting things. And I never approached it I'm going to be a serious artist. So, I was taking some introductory classes, as you do freshman year. And I had some great professors, and some of them I realized were great at the time, some of them I didn't. Phil Orenstein's still one of my favorites. Paul Bruner, Lloyd McNeil, who unfortunately passed away recently from what I just read. But one of the first things, as soon as I walked in, it was like, well, you like to do comic art and cartooning, that's not really serious art. So I was like, all right, well, I'm just going to open myself up to everything. And for the first 1.5 years, that was working well for me. I remember particularly with
The 2 skeletons.
Oh,
So funny.
I'm boring my wife.
No. I just got a shock of it.
I remember particularly my freshman year. Turn around here? Okay. Coming back out of my last design and visual arts class, feeling just really psyched and focused, and that focus remains all summer. And I learned a lot about some of the basic fundamentals of art in the year. I was also, I think, a little overly ambitious with my schedule. Why don't we say? I don't know why, but I was like, I'm going to graduate in 3 years. So
I didn't even want to do that.
yeah, my first
That's a lot.
year and a half, I overloaded my schedule.
Yeah, that's a lot.
And I was doing well. I was on the dean's list. And then this is something I have never really talked about.
You think it was me?
Even, I think, to a lesser degree with you. But you tell me, I probably haven't, because I don't like discussing it. So, your sophomore year, after the first semester, like actually somewhere in the first semester, and I don't know if this is still the same way that they do it, you had to do, you had to get another portfolio review. So in my mind, I'm like, all right, I'm acing all my classes, I'm doing well. I even tried to go back to the student admissions department and see if they had any notes from my initial portfolio review from when I was in high school, just to see if I could improve upon anything. And no, there were no notes. I signed up for it was one of the very first reviews. If I remember right, it was like 3 teachers who I'd never seen before. There was supposed to be a 4th one, and they weren't there yet. And they were reviewing everything, and they're like, and I was very naive. I still am at times. And I just remember them saying, hey, what does your dad do for a living? And I was like, he's an attorney. It's like, have you thought about maybe becoming an attorney? And if I was really kind of paying attention, I guess, or understood what they were getting at, I probably would have fought back a little bit, though I'm not the most confrontational person, even when I have my hand in front of the camera lens, like right now. But, I was always of the opinion, hey, look, these are your teachers. These are the people you're supposed to listen to. So I didn't really argue with them or anything like that. So I was like, all right, fine. Actually, it was this semester. Yeah, I left it at that, didn't do anything. Over the winter break that year, it was a rough year for us. My aunt passed away, my mom's sister. And it was unexpected. She had breast cancer, but it was weird. It was she was every other year she was okay, so this was supposed to be her off year, And I was working in the meantime, and just during Christmas break, and I guess I just didn't give myself a lot of time to process things and whatnot. And when I went back to school, that second half, I was informed I was on quote unquote artistic probation. So
I
maybe
remember that.
what?
I remember telling you that.
Yeah, which I still kind of don't understand what it is. And I asked them, and they said, well, we think that, although your grades are good, because I said, look, I'm on the dean's list. How am I in probation? I said, although your grades are good, we don't see the potential in your work. But I said, but my work is a reflection of my grades. Like, yeah, but what are you doing outside of the classroom? And I said, studying. And they were kind of approaching me like I was like a party kid, and that was not the case ever. And I said, so all you do is just study? I was like, no, I work as well. I was working part-time. I kind of made it so that, walking around money was my responsibility. I didn't really take handouts from my parents or anything like that, and I don't think they understood that. I said, well, maybe you should spend more time going to museums and visiting and just kind of drawing in. I was like, all right, well, I'll carve out a little time to draw on my own and whatnot, but I was dealing with a lot at the time. Um, Somewhere that semester, it's kind of tough because you have to understand that growing up, I had few friends. I had one very good best friend that I was tight with, but to the point where it was like no other, like friends hanging around. In high school, if I wasn't working or studying or hanging out with my friends, I'd be home drawing. I wouldn't be just doing stupid things. Maybe be playing video games, that's about it. But those were all safe bets. I didn't have a whole lot of friends. One really good best friend at the time, so I thought but that was about it. So when I was being told, fast forward, that your artwork, the stuff that you work on all day, every day, the stuff that you like doing is no good. And I remember most of the time, like, cool demeanored person, but in the back of my head, I'll be like, I'll be like cursing somebody out, but it'll be like, but my exterior will just be like this, pretty much. Like calm and collected.
Right.
And I remember part of the review when I read it was like, well, he doesn't really seem to care. I don't see a passion for artwork in this because he didn't react. And I was saying to myself, so were you supposed to be evaluating me in my psyche or my artwork?
Yeah.
So that semester was tough because I was like, I don't know why I'm here. And I actually had, for the first time, lost the urge to make artwork.
That's just bullcrap.
Well, it kind of got worse because I didn't really address that. My grades went from, again, I was on Dean's List. I went then that semester to like 2.75.
That's so weird.
Well, mine did this too. I had 3 different advisors in about 2 years as well. So I would go and I would tell them this, and it would be like, okay, well, this doesn't matter because next term you have another advisor. And that was their own turnover rate. So they said, look, you could appeal this, and do another review, but that's not going to take place for another year. So I'm kind of like in this artistic purgatory until then. So that summer, again, and I guess this says a lot about mental health. I didn't go back and address anything. I was just, again, hang out with my friends and whatnot. My friend, I should say at that point. Junior year was not a good year, fall semester, because at this point, I was going to class, kind of, sort of, but didn't care. There's some stuff that happened that summer personally that was really affecting me, and to be honest with you, my sleep schedule was all screwed up. So I quickly, my grade point average plummeted, and I didn't even realize it. For the first time I had failed classes. I just was not doing well. I went from a 2.75, hold on, honey, to a 0.75. And I knew I had a bad semester. I was just so exhausted at this point. This is going into winter break of my junior year. I figured, let me go home, shake off whatever I have to shake off, come back refreshed for the next term. So this is the late 90s at this point, and I'll tell you why that's important coming next. So I go to my first class is the spring semester, my junior year, and my name's not on the roster. Go to the next class, same thing. So the teachers pretty much knew me, like, hey, you should really go to your advisor. So to my advisor, and they were like, I don't know if you're aware, but you are expelled. And I said, excuse me? Yeah, we sent a certified letter to your house. So it's like, I didn't get anything. You would have gotten a phone call from me at the very least. So they said, all right, well, just go to class tomorrow.
I would have taken them to court.
Well, hold on a second. Go to class tomorrow, and we'll address this. Come back tomorrow. So went to my classes like in this kind of limbo, and I went back to the office and like, we sent a certified letter. You said that you didn't get it. We see that we got it sent back. So yeah, you're expelled right now. It's like, and I said, and this was a brand new advisor at this point. This was basically a stranger. And I remember just sitting in that office, just like letting everything out and just saying, look, what, what do you expect me to do? And I was saying, look, my aunt passed away. I am not over that. I can't study. I go to these things. I'm having trouble sleeping. And I wound up getting like notes from my doctor that kind of like backed this up, because I was going to a doctor at the time. And I said, look, I came here committed to doing better this semester and shaking it off. And I think they had to go to the dean, and they said, okay, this is what we're going to do. We're going to probationally approve you for this semester. But you can't do, and I said, and not for nothing, you've had me in limbo for almost a year now as far as this artistic probation goes, which I don't even know about. And I should say this too. I remember when I said I'm filing an appeal. I'm sorry I didn't mention this. I'm going out of order. Like, it was like classic, like little guy movie time. It was like, I remember the secretary said, well, we haven't had anybody ever appeal a decision like this. And I said, well, okay. I don't know what you want me to do with that, but I'm going to appeal. So at that point, I had finished enough of my art classes where I think I just had to do like 2 or 3 more. And I was now focusing as well, like on kind of humanities. That was probably the smarter thing I did in college, was I got like the requirements out of the way first, and then just took whatever humanities, like, this sounds interesting, let me do that, because that probably saves me for the next like year and a half, right? Fast forward, I think this was at the end of my junior year. They finally said, we're ready to look at your portfolio now. And I came with everything I had done plus more. This time I had different teachers, and I remember the process too. With your appeal, you had to write this big letter. My dad helped you with it. My parents were pissed, naturally. And I guess my dad was approaching it from a law perspective, and he said, well, this is subjective, because their only answer to that was, it's not. And the basis was, how am I getting A's and you putting me on artistic probation, putting the other things aside for a moment.
That's why I didn't understand.
So, you asked how come I never sued. I remember part of the appeal process is that this was the only way to do this, and by
they
going,
have an agreement in there?
well, by going through the appeal, you waive the right to sue.
Yeah.
Which is why my dad got involved. Because I don't understand this. I'm 20. So then, I remember bringing all my stuff there. There were 2 teachers I knew at the time. And again, it's just like, well, I remember you did this one in my class. And I said, yes. It's like, what are you doing outside of class? And I showed them an entire notebook of stuff. And I remember even like a bunch of paintings I had done. My fall junior year painting teacher was a nightmare. They brought in an artist from the outside. I don't even remember the guy's name, but he was anti everything about the school. So I had a stack of, I'm going to say like 15 to 30 paintings. And I remember my figure drawing teacher was one of the people doing this, and he said, these are good, but I know that this is not you. And I said, and he didn't mean I didn't do it by that. He knows that that's not what I was into. And I said, well, yeah, I've got this teacher. And as soon as he said, wait, you're taking that class, it was like they identified that teacher as a problem. And apparently they were like, yeah, he had a bit of a reputation, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was not invited back, as far as I know, to the school after that semester. So basically, the way that we had left the review, they said, we see that you're doing stuff, and that's good. And, we kind of apologize because we feel like you're somebody who simply has slipped through the cracks, and that your work is still not good. But based on the fact that we're giving you all good grades, We have no choice but to approve you, but, we don't see any way that you're going to be graduating from our program. And I said, that's fine. And immediately after that, I transferred from the art school to the university school. So it was more of a generalized degree. So instead of like a BFA in art, I have a BA in art. And I remember it was kind of a nice little, I thought at the time it was a nice little victory moment for me, because that last semester, like, I went from pretty much as bad as you can get with your grades to going back up to an A. You okay?
Yeah.
And then at the university graduation, one of the teachers who were up on the stage, how they just have teachers helping out, right?
Yeah.
Happened to be my design teacher, who I still like, Paul Bruner, who I think was part of the first review. And he was always nicer about the reviews, but it was kind of like, hey, remember they said I wouldn't graduate, and now here I am graduating on time. So he shook his hand. I had reached out to him, I think, one other time after I graduated, and that was it. So when I was out of school, I was so burnt out from artwork and from drawing in general. I had done one other piece of art after I graduated. I told you my aunt had passed away the year prior. Her school wanted me to do a mural in the cafeteria, and I wouldn't take money for it. They just paid for supplies, and I did a mural of her. And I remember it was pretty much incomplete, but I had her face down on it, and it was a good drawing of her face, a good painting of her face. And I was going to do more, and then I didn't know that they were bringing in the graduating class, like the last graduating class that knew her. They had like their senior trip, so they kind of ruined the surprise. And after that, I was like, her face is here. Everything else is done, even though like it was kind of like really kind of like a broadly sketched thing of stuff around her. And I didn't know this. Like a year later, they painted over it. I was pissed off at the time. My mom explained, because my mom was on the board of ed, and she's like, it's not that it was a bad painting, it was just a lot of teachers that were her friends that would come in every day would see this and get upset. And I said, okay, I understand it. And I do have pictures of that somewhere. So it's gone, but it's not gone, But she said, it's the kind of the funniest thing. Did you use any kind of special paint on her face? And I said, no. Because the janitor painted over it. And then the next day, her face reappeared through the paint that the janitor painted over. So we have to cross the street to go back into our house. I guess this is a good point to stop. I've been talking a long time too, but we'll continue soon. We'll go into more kind of post-college stuff, and maybe up to the present. I told you this was going to be kind of like the most involved one, but I think I'm kind of leaving it at a point where you kind of understand my viewpoint at least a little bit. So anything you want to add?
Nope.
Peace, love, and comics, and we got to do our Frogger thing later.